You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Rathe. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 251 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden Dale here with Pankaj, Bhojwani. We are right in the middle of Compendium of Rathe preview season. The world premiere is this coming weekend. By the time this pod drops, it's in 24 hours probably. We have a debate. We're probably gonna post this early, so if you're listening to this early, it's come out early. And if you're listening it will come out early. We're gonna drop it early, don't worry. But very excited for this coming weekend. Of course, Pankaj, you're gonna be there in person on coverage for the world premiere and the calling. I'll be watching from home and getting all my creative juices flowing for Silver Age, because we have seen all the commons and rares now at this point, and that's what we're going to talk about on the pod this week, is a bit of introduction to Silver Age, I guess, a bit of Sage 101, what we're expecting to see from this brand new format now that it is basically beyond early adoption and now is about to hit its kind of full release with the world premiere and calling this weekend before we get into the ProQuest season. And we have a bunch of new cards for this format. So yeah, lots to talk about this week on the pod, Pankaj.
We're at the point in Sage, which is where the developers intended, using their own words, where pre-pen Sage was not meant to be played, or there wasn't basically any development time put into what Sage looks like before pen drops. But now we are post-pen, effectively, as of this coming weekend. And it's Sage as the developers intended. And I am hoping someone breaks it. I'm hoping at London we see something really, really cool. I think some of the established players coming into pen release, in Sage were like known, and I'm not entirely sure the pen is actually shaking that up. I hope it does, though. I hope we see something really cool come out at the London World Premiere this weekend. I can't wait. Yeah,
interesting. I'm keen to talk about that. Of course, we've already had a bit of a shake-up to the format, which I guess we can get into, unless this week in Flesh and Blood, Pankaj, have you been playing any Sage in preparation for this weekend? Have you been playing any Flesh and Blood? What's it kind of look like for you?
I've been doing some brewing for the World Premiere Day, so I will be doing another show match against Scott Mines, like what we did at the World Premiere in Montreal, where we just jam a couple of games against each other with the new cards. This is unique, obviously, because there's no new heroes in Sage, and a lot of the cards we'll be using will still be, older cards that people have seen. But I think we're both trying to put in some effort in making sure there's enough pen stuff going on in our decks. So been basically mostly doing that. What about you?
Yeah, I've been brewing, that's for sure. I've got a number of Fabry tabs open with different decks that I've been brewing. I think we're going to play some games as well, right? To sort of see how good our brewing is so far, give you a bit of practice before you have to duel with Mr. Mines. But other than that, not played a whole heap. I didn't play the final week of Road to Nationals. I was away over the weekend. So yeah, it's kind of been it. But I'm excited just to get in and talk about Silver Age, because I genuinely have quite a high level of hype that I've not had for a new set in a while in the form of Compendium of Rathe. And I think, of course, given that there's a new format attached to this in some ways, I think it's just kind of doubling down on that hype. I quite like, I don't say like underpowered things, but things that are maybe a little bit under the broken level. I like power, but I like it to be a little bit atypical in some ways. And so yeah, I'm excited to see what we get out of this. I think we know some of the players that are already at the forefront of Silver Age potentially, but I do think there are some really interesting things in pen, and some things that maybe aren't as obvious as some others, and maybe we won't see that at the world premiere calling weekend, but maybe as we get into the ProQuest season we'll start to see some of these things. And definitely by the time we get to Yokohama for the Pro Tour, we will see a close to established format at that point.
Oh, for sure. And also by Yokohama, I think we'll probably have our first wave of community bannings. I'm actually not entirely sure what the timeline is.
I think that's right.
On that. But it sounds like it would be right. I feel like it would just make sense if before the first Pro Tour there was actually a wave of community bannings. And I believe there was also a dev talk. I guess we can just move on to the news.
Yeah,
there was a dev talk talking about Chain being benched. Effectively, the developer ban for this season in Sage is Chain, and Brian and James both spoke about that, and they did mention that this was not the intention to sort of have the developer ban being put out so early. But now that it is, I feel like by Yokohama we probably should also have the player bans coming in, which would be super exciting for that. We had a bunch of previews drop for Pen. To be clear, this pod we are recording not when all the Majestic spoilers are. There's still a few more scheduled for a day or two from now. So by the time you hear this, you would have seen all the spoilers. But we unfortunately haven't, so we'll just be discussing just for a little bit a few of the ones that caught our eyes the most. And then also, there was a rules change. I was really excited about this one. They announced this last week after we recorded last week's pod, but before it dropped. This is mostly regarding how allies are handled in combat in Flesh and Blood with regards to allies. TLDR, when you attack with an ally, you are still considered the attacking hero. So this affects things like Victor's clashing or like Riptide's traps. Mm-hmm. And when your ally is attacked, you are still the defending hero. So this also affects a whole bunch of cards. Caveat, though, there are some things that say when this attacks a hero,
it doesn't count.
And those still don't work. That's like Marinette's ability, for example, does not work. For the Drukai does not work because it says when this attacks a hero. But if you have an effect that says when this attacks blah 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 the defending hero, then that will still work. Even though you're attacking an ally, which I do think is a little bit confusing. I wonder if they can clean that up as well. Maybe they didn't want to go too far for the balance around it, but I'm so glad. I was so happy when I saw these changes. There was also a third part released in the same article, which is layers still resolve when the target no longer exists. This is quite niche. It happens very rarely in Flesh and Blood. Happened a lot when the Mystic Heroes were a thing, where you... I forget the chi that puts a card at the bottom of your deck. Preserve Tradition.
Yeah.
You play a Preserve Tradition, the opponent responds like pass over, banishing your target, and then like nothing happens. Your full card basically fizzles. Yeah, this basically fixes those sorts of interactions. But the main meat of this article definitely was the ally combat changes, which I was super happy to see. I think I mentioned on the pod many times before, that whole interaction felt buggy to me. It felt like the sort of interaction where if this was a digital game, and I'm defending, and my ally's like pet my opponent's pet is like attacking me, and I did a defensive thing, and it just didn't deal damage to the pet or the opponent. I would literally go into the bug report section and say, "Hey, this thing didn't work," even though I really feel like it should, and you should fix it. So I'm glad that they've done that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to me. I'm curious to see how much this really changes, honestly. I don't think it's like a significant nerf to allies or anything like that. I think it's more of just like a fixing of how things probably should work anyway. The third one around like layers resolving when there's no target, it's interesting. You said, I think you used did you say the term tidied that up or fixed it up? Is that what you said? I think when you
I used that for the allies. For this one, I just said, I don't think I use that term, but
okay.
I don't know. Just go on.
I think I think my view is that I'm not sure. This feels a bit counterintuitive to me a little bit, because if there's no legal target, I don't really understand why things should still resolve. So I think this has always been something coming from Magic that kind of made sense to me of like, yeah, like the one used is a perfect example. The Passover Preserve Tradition example was like a really good example. I think to me that's how that should work. Like I think those sort of interactions in games are really good interactions. So I don't know. I think I would prefer that still work that way, but I can see the kind of argument of you play a card, you do what the card says, and then you move on, even if there's no target for the card, I guess. So.
As someone who didn't come from Magic, or rather just had like a passing familiarity with Magic stuff, I played a bunch of Commander, but like nothing really competitive. So I know I know the Magic rules in general, but never went super deep into it. I don't really have an idea of how something like should work. Or like when you say should, like, I don't really have that in a sense response to these interactions. But I do find this whole subject fascinating because this part of the rules is very much rules engine based. It's not exactly specific card based. And to expand this further, the other thing that fascinated me about the difference between Flesh and Blood and Magic rules is the whole intervening if, right? So when you have a condition that says when something something, if something something, in Magic that whole layer wouldn't even go on the stack if the if condition wasn't met. But in Flesh and Blood, when X happens, it'll go on the stack always, and then when the layer resolves, that's when you check the if condition. So, and I always thought that was like just a really cool thing, because that's got nothing to do, that just got to do with like how the rules engine in a sense is written. And to me, this is very much in that same realm. In Magic, it's like, oh, if you couldn't fulfill part of the condition of the card, the entire card fizzles, and that's why they've written their rules engine. Where it's like, if you think of it as like code, for example, your first if statement failed and then the whole function just exits. Whereas this is like, oh, you will just go through every part of the card and try and fulfill as much of it as possible. Yeah. And so to me, when I look at it that way, especially since I didn't come from Magic, I feel like these are both extremely viable rules engine implementations. And it's just who chose to do what for whatever reason, right? That's almost like a designer decision rather than this is something that should work this way or should work the other way.
That's fair. I think this conversation or this debate has been long had in other games as well, honestly. So it's nothing new. They've just chosen to make a stance on how it will work in Flesh and Blood. So makes sense.
I tell you what just English wise should work though. It's like when a card says when this is played. It's like played, but it hasn't resolved yet. It's still considered to have been played, which I know Riftbound has a really weird rules on this, where the card isn't considered played until it's fully resolved. That to me feels weird.
Yeah, but that's something that Fab does.
That's like
do,
an
right,
English
though.
thing.
Yeah, Fab does that correctly though. Like you play the card, you can respond because this is obviously like Chi is a great example, right? Like if you've transcended this, you can hold priority, or you can play a wizard card. Now you've played a wizard card, and you can do your things on top of that, right? So
yeah, that to me makes sense.
Yeah, me too. All right, we spoke about. We're going to talk more about the impacts of Chain being benched, of course, for Sage as we get into it. I think that has a pretty massive. I mean, it's the best deck, right? And Chain is pretty broken, so I think it definitely has a big impact. Also, they printed more cards that would have been even better in Sage Chain as well. So, I'm interested to see what happens there. Final week of Road to National season. Do you want to talk about that at all before we move on?
Yeah. So Verdance was finally dethroned in our Week 5 Road to National results. We had Arachne Marinette leading the charge this time at 21 wins. And then we had Syndra, the follow-up.
Told you.
Hayden. I think you probably were excited about that one, with 16 wins, and then Verdance after that at 14 wins. And then we have our usual smattering of heroes. We have KO Armed and Dangerous, which both of us get very confused about, at 9 wins. Gravy Bones at 8 wins. Acilio, Pleiades, Victor Goldmane, all at 6 wins each. And at 5 and below, we have a whole bunch of other heroes. Kasai has fallen further as...
Finally.
I think we predicted a little bit as well, and Fang is even further down with the Florin getting out of there. So yeah, those were RTN Week 5 results. We also had the overall results over all the weeks of RTNs, with Verdance leading the pack there, 70 wins, Marinette at second at 67, and then Gravy Bones at 49 being the third, which is interesting because I feel like for the past few weeks, Gravy has definitely been below the third. But in the overall, he's still the third, so that's interesting.
I really want to go back to Week 1 or pre-Week 1 of Road to Nationals, where I was like, pretty sure Verdance is going to do really well this season, even if we don't think it's one of the two best decks. I think we're pretty quick to say that we thought Marinette and Gravy Bones are probably the two best decks, but Verdance is something that I had pretty high up, and I was looking through my notes from the pre-pod, and I was like, yeah, Verdance going to have a good season.
You know what else we were both aligned on? On KO being absolute garbage, and he's fourth. He's fourth in overall results with 45 wins. He's just below Gravy Bones, which is nuts. I don't get how this hero wins anything. Speaking of him winning a bunch, he's close to LLing. They pushed a Living Legend point update, and KO is at 959 points.
Yeah, wow.
He's 41 points away from LLing.
I just want to point out as well, Reiner had 4 wins this past week in the Road to Nationals as well, which I thought was quite interesting given how good I think Syndra was for this past weekend, like we spoke about. Yeah. What are the biggest surprises for you? You spoke about Gravy, obviously maybe less wins than we thought. KO more than we thought. Any other surprises for you and how... I mean, you were declaring Prism was going to be a big player this season, Pankaj.
She's been sneaking up, though. If you look at, again, the Living Legend points, actually Verdance and Prism are also pretty close to, like, they're in the realm of we need to be talking about them
progress.
As if they're going to LL in the next few months.
Yeah.
Yeah, Verdance at 876 and Prism at 874. Do feel like they're about to LL soon. Yeah, Prism, I think the Florian piece of it was what I missed, right, a few weeks ago. I think when we started, none of us really expected Florian to come up, and I think when Florian did come up, that sort of put a wrench in the whole, like, Prism potentially being a big player. I think a big surprise for me is Syndra. I wouldn't have called Syndra's rise after the brand ban. But I think we discussed this a while back where because Marinette doesn't have full freedom to just flip into Black Widow at some point in the game because they sort of need to use a mask to make a Callistra. And actually, that was the main thing. Was like because they don't have that anymore, Syndra actually gets to play that matchup a little bit better, and maybe has slots for Arachne hate cards as well. So I think that's interesting. But that was not something I called before.
No, definitely something that snuck up on me by about week 2 or 3. Obviously, I played Syndra in week 3, I think. Week 3. So it was quite interesting. I do want to point out, Pankaj, I did mention in week 1 of our Road to Nationals previews, I thought Florian was the dark horse, like the pick that might just be potentially a really, really good pick. And 2 weeks later, it had definitely exploded. So a lot of people were obviously seeing that already of just how good Florian was. And I think the win rates at the time when we spoke about the win rates on like Talishar and stuff were really supporting how good Florian seemed to be. It just didn't seem right when you're like, well, but Gravy and Verdance are 2 of the best decks. But Florian just still super powerful at the end of the day. And I think also almost a little bit of the opposite of Verdance, where Verdance was doing so well at the Pro Quest level. It's like Florian was doing so well at the calling level, which was quite interesting. So, or the Road to Nationals level rather, versus the not Pro Quest.
Yeah. He did pretty well at the RTN results as well. His overall was 39.
Yeah, it was from 3 weeks, right?
6th, and that's for like 3 weeks of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, should we move on? We've got a lot to talk about when it comes to Compendium of Rathe and Sage. So we're going to forego the Commander Cookout this week, unless you've got anything on the news, Pankaj, left to touch on.
Yes, we want to cover just some spoilers that are not Sage relevant. So some of the Majestic spoilers that we have seen so far, including our own. So let's start with our own, which is Tempest Dances. Wizard equipment legs, blocks for 0, has Blade Break though. And it says, when this leaves the arena, you may play your next non-attack action card this turn as though it were an instant. So a few things.
Is Stormstrider's getting banned? Is Stormstrider's getting banned? That's the question everyone's asking.
This is like Stormstrider's at home, or like Stormstrider's budget, except it's Majestic. So you can't play it in Sage. And in CC, you're basically always going to play Stormstriders. We'll get into some differences. There are some differences. But most of the time in CC, you're going to play Stormstriders. So what if, Hayden, after Silver Age, we have Golden Age? Oh. And in Golden Age, you can play Majestics, but you can't play Legendaries, and that's what this card is for.
Is this what you've been thinking about, is it?
I have no clue why this card exists otherwise. Let's talk about, I guess, the differences. The first one being that it doesn't cost 1. Okay, I'm going to talk about the pros first over Striders, and then go into the cons, and the cons are massive. Sure. So the pros are this doesn't cost 1. And the second pro is that you can use this on non-wizard, non-attack actions.
Correct. So you can play
That's it. I'm out of pros.
Tome of Oh, wait. No, you can't play that. You can play your...
You can play your Fog down at instant speed on their turn after they close the combat.
Can't believe that's your example. That's... Sure. Okay. Well, you could play your Warmonger's Diplomacy after they close the combat chain. Put their blue card in the bin.
It won't affect them on this turn, though.
That's next turn, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
You can play if you're an Ice Hero, you can play your Winter's Bite on their turn, which you couldn't with Striders.
You could if you're Icelander.
Or your Cold Snap. Yeah, from hand. You can play a red Winter's Bite.
True. Okay. So that's the positives. What's the negatives on the card there, Pankaj?
Okay, negatives. First one, there's no Arcane Barrier on this one. Stormstriders does have Arcane Barrier too, which comes up in the Wizard Mirror. Number 2, and this is the biggest one, is the timing is so incredibly restrictive, right? You need them to close the combat chain before you get the effect of getting to play your next non-attack as an instant. And that has quite a few ramifications. The first one being, it's face up. So if you block on like Chain Link 1 or 2 with this, they know you're trying to pop off or something, and they may just not play any further cards and hold their hand and close the chain, and then they now have the cards to AB. Whereas the stride is, you could wait for them to go extend the chain more and then go ahead and blow them up afterwards. Another one in the wizard, I mean, and then the other big ramification is that they can just not give you the opportunity to do this at all. So for example, one play pattern Avoidance does a lot these days is they'll go like E-Strike Felling, make you block out or strip your hand, and then on your turn when you have no cards, Striders kill you. That literally cannot happen anymore with this card. You can strip their hand, the opponent can just block you out, but because they've blocked you out, they're not attacking you, you can't block. And then you can't actually get your effect from this card.
Yeah.
So there's ramifications in like...
You have to survive,
regular,
basically, if that happens.
Yeah. There's ramifications like regular matchup for Wizards, but in the Wizard Mirror, I was thinking about this as well. I feel like it does take away a whole bunch of skill expression in the Wizard Mirror if you can just not let them do the instant speed thing on your turn. I think a big part of why Wizard Mirrors have been compelling in the past is sort of being aware of both turn cycles and playing on both turn cycles. And this basically allows the players to say, no, you don't get to actually play on this side of the turn cycle unless I send a physical attack at you.
Yeah.
And I think that does detract a little bit. So whole list of cons there. What are your thoughts on this card?
I mean, I've seen this card now for a couple of weeks, so I've been trying to really get my head around what I think the implication of this card is, and I really struggle to go past either we're getting a non-attack action that's going to be super, there's a non-attack action that I'm missing that's super relevant to one of our wizard friends, maybe that already exists, or is to exist in the future. But I couldn't necessarily find anything now that I felt that way about. Or Stormstriders is getting banned. That's kind of, I think, the most obvious, and that was obviously where a lot of the comments were when we dropped this preview as well, and it's where I kind of started and where I finished on this card. So, do you know what? Do you know the funniest thing? And I was like, trying to work out. I always think, like, why did LSS give us certain preview cards, right? And we've had a lot of cards over time. Fleshbag, for instance, was a preview card we got. Brilliant. I've always been a big Intimidate fan in particular, not just Brew fan, but like a Rhinar and Intimidate fan. We had Pulse Wave Harpoon, as a card that we had, I think, after I'd been playing a lot of Dash and making some deck techs for Dash. We've had some Wizard cards in the past. I think, did we have...
Quick Dodge... not Wizard, but we did have Quick Dodge Flexes as well.
Quick Dodge Flexes. Awesome. Yeah, we've had some amazing previews, obviously. And I was thinking about this one, and I was like, Brendan Patrick was a big, he spoke a lot about Stormstriders and that card and how strong it is. And Pankaj, you've spoken a decent amount about Stormstriders. And so I feel like, it was just fitting that Arsenal Pass had to reveal Tempest Dancers, to be honest. The next step in terms of, so to speak, Tempest Dancers' impact on the format is yet to be seen. But who better to, I guess, see it than Arsenal Pass, so it makes sense. So that also added another tick in the column of, I think, maybe there's a Stormstriders ban. I mean, they don't take banning legendaries lightly, right? But let's be honest, Stormstriders is so powerful that it limits a lot of what they can potentially do with the Wizards. I know a lot of people have said that was like the conversation not even recently, just for a long time, of like, just ban Wildfire, for instance, and then you get to do all these other things potentially for Kano or whatever it might be. But I kind of feel the same about Stormstriders. It's like, well, Stormstriders is just an auto-include in every single, wizard, I guess, that hasn't been Acilio. And Acilio is cool and different, and I like that. But I think they are just really shackled with Stormstriders. So, and put it this way, right? If a legendary was going to be banned, Pankaj, like, what legendary is it? Like, I think it's Stormstriders. Like, that's the most obvious one to me in terms of if you're going to try and rebalance a class and what it has access to. Stormstriders is the most polarizing legendary for a class right now, I think, and has been for quite some time since Crown of Seeds.
I definitely get the point about restricting design space. It does feel like they can't really make a really cool, tall arcane spell while Stormstriders exists. I think we all had our alarm bells ringing already when they released the 6 damage arcane spells, like Burn Bear and Light Up the Leaves. Mm-hmm. We were all like, wait, with Stormstriders, isn't this kind of nuts? And you can imagine how, if they want to print more and more arcane spells of that nature, it's like Stormstriders makes it kind of impossible for them to do so. Like, I don't know, for example, if they ever release like an X arcane spell, like it's an X cost and it deals X arcane damage, which would, I think, fit a wizard theme very well, where it's sinking all the resources as like one big spell, and perhaps it once you like set up a bunch of energy potions or something, for example, so it still fits into the wizard idea of setting up for a massive power spike. Well, if Storm Striders exist, they just can never make a card like that, right? Because then you're booming people for like 20 on their turn or something. So I definitely get the point about the design space. So I take solace in the fact of us seeing this. If this is a herald of a potential Storm Striders ban, what gives me a little bit of comfort is that maybe this means they're actually going to give us some stronger wizard cards.
Yeah, I agree. We should move on because I was going to be here all day. But one thing I do want to say is I've had this thought for a long time, and I'd love to get your perspective on Pankaj, is I want to get a piece of art done with like all of the Arsenal Past preview cards, like kind of framed. So I'm thinking about, I mean, I have all the cards, obviously, like because most of our cards have been good and I've played with them, or they've been average and they were cheap to buy anyway. But I think I want to make like a display, because there's been, how many sets has there been of Flesh and Blood? Is this 15?
Oh. Pen was... I don't know why the term 17 is in my head.
Yeah, it might be.
Because the third set of this year is 20, right? There was a lot of hype around the last set of this year going to be 20. I feel like there was an announcement of that. So Pen should be 18.
I think it's more than that. I think it's more than that. Because I think Super Slam, I just found this article that someone wrote, Super Slam is listed as 19. That looks right, yeah. Just scrolling through them. So, they've got classic battles in here. I'm not going to include, and history packs. So, if I take those two out, then that makes High Seas, or makes Super Slam 17, I guess. But also, if you include Guardian, Mastery Pack Guardian, then Super Slam would have been 18, which means this would be 19, right? So, depending on how you look at it, this is either 18 or 19, I think.
I think it's 18. I think they said set 20 is the third set of 2026.
Okay, makes sense.
I remember
true set, because
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So in that case, for the Arcane Rising and Welcome to Rathe, we weren't playing. We did get a Crucible of War spoiler, so there you go. We've done 16 so far. There you go. That's a nice grid. 4x4.
Yeah, a little uncut sheet there.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a... I said we've got to move on, and then I completely distracted us, so let's move on.
Cool. Any other Majestic spoilers you want to talk about before we talk about Sage?
I know you've put me on the spot. I thought this was your thing. Is there any other ones you want to talk about?
Okay. I'll bring one up because we spoke about it in the pre-show. Lobotomy.
Yeah, this card looks awesome.
Lobotomy is so cool. Yeah. Yeah, I should have prepared this one too. Okay, hang on one second.
I'm also using Fabry, and not all the cards have been updated on Fabry. I was like, yes, I will bring these up so we can show them for video watchers on the pod, and it looks like neither our card nor basically anything that's been released today is not up on Fabry yet. So
that's actually also why I'm struggling to go find it, because I need to go into a Discord now, into card reveals channel. Okay, so Lobotomy, 0 cost assassin action attack, Majestic, comes in red, attacks for 3, blocks for 3, standard, stealth, attack, stat line. And it says, when this attacks, you may equip an Orbitoclast from your inventory, and when this hits a hero, if you control an Orbitoclast, they lose all hero card abilities during the next action phase. Yeah, kind of like a sleep dart / a one-turn dishonor, but I think the equipping an Orbitoclast when this attacks text is kind of nuts.
It's nuts.
If you think about it with Flick Knives, which is sort of the way you would have had an empty Dragger slot anyway, this is kind of like a 0 for 4 stealth line, even if all you do is just flick the Orbitoclast anyway, not even counting the additional text of getting a sleep dart-like effect.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this, because on one hand, first of all, the art on this is awesome, and the effect is super, super cool, and I love this. I don't know if I love leaning even further into Flick Knives, because I do think all the assassins right now are really reliant on Flick Knives, and I would like to see assassins that don't need to play Flick Knives, basically, because I think that's really interesting. So, I don't know, I'm kind of torn on this card. On one hand, yes, I think this card is really good, and super interesting that there's a design space with different daggers, you're playing Flick Knives, but then Orbitoclast, and what does that do, and how do you then utilize that card? But then also Flick Knives, so you just flick the card and then you make another space for something else. So you just be like, the very base value of this card is like, well, it's 0 for 4 because it lets you flick a dagger or get the equipped dagger back. So it's like, and has a relevant on-hit effect. So I'm like, I don't know. So I'm kind of torn on this card, but I do think it's very, very cool and very interesting design space.
I did not consider the whole sort of siloing assassins into everyone using flick knives with this sort of thing, which you brought up, which I definitely do agree with now that you've pointed it out. I think you're right. Maybe we can start moving towards assassins that don't really use flick knives. Like Nu was an example, right? Nu was an assassin that didn't really use flick knives, but Uzuri, Slippy, Mario all definitely do, and this card as well is sort of in that line. So I'm with you. I think on that front, maybe we could start seeing cards that don't want assassins use flick knives that much. But I do like the aspect of encouraging assassins to have different daggers. I always thought that was like a really cool part of the assassin design. And when I think back about Nu, I think one of my favorite times of playing Nu was when I had like Scale Peeler in the side for like the specific Zen matchup, and to other matchups I'm playing Mistblade, Spider, something like that. And the whole preparing a dagger for the specific matchup feels very assassin-like to me. So I do like that aspect of this card where it encourages you to go play Arbitroclast. And maybe if you start seeing assassins that are more... that if the assassins maybe move towards the direction of, okay, you have all these different daggers and you're equipping and unequipping them depending on the status of throughout the course of the game, I think that would also still be very cool, even though it is still very much following the flick knives space.
Yep. Yeah. The one last one I'll shout out from a Majestic standpoint is Vestige of Flagellation, which is the Shadow Equipment chest. Majestic's Blade Break, defense for 2, and says the first time an opponent would gain life each turn. Instead, you lose that much life and create that many figure tokens. I think this card is quite, on the surface, quite narrow, quite niche, right? But I do think there is this aspect of life gain and the power life gain has against, like, in fatigue decks and things like this. And I'm interested to see how this card plays out. Because I think in theory, it's like, cool, you have this way to like do anti-life gain, but you turn your opponent's life gain into like lava spikes, like damage spells effectively. And I don't know if that is just kind of bad or it's actually really interesting. A lot of these things sometimes in Flesh and Blood, I think, look interesting on the surface. And then once someone's kind of played with it a few times, you play with it a few times, you realize that there's kind of just like a prevailing best way to play around a card or to play against a card. But what I will say is it's super interesting and we've not really seen anything like this before.
At first, I thought it was really bad for exactly the reason you pointed out, where it turns all your opponent's life gains into like poison the wells against you in a sense, where they can just nuke it, they can just burn you basically with all their life gain. But then I thought about it further, and I think you would only bring this in to a fatigue style matchup, right? Like to your point, like imagine if Vince had needed to play against a CYB deck back in the day. Well, that CYB deck, most of them weren't really pressuring you down anyway. Exactly. So if you can just deny them the 20 life gain, your chess piece basically dealt 20 to them, and your life total doesn't matter in a fatigue style matchup. It's your cards in deck that matter. You usually get fatigued and you're still at like 20 life or something in a lot of those cases. So then I was like, wait, maybe this chess piece, to your point, is, while very narrow, maybe actually really strong in those sort of situations. And the other thing that I thought about, is this perhaps heralding the prophesied cleric class? Maybe. And maybe the shadow talent is meant to be the anti-cleric sort of the archetype,
like cleric and shadow. Maybe we're getting a shadow necromancer at some point. I don't know. Do you think
shadow wizard?
Do we get vampire one day? I don't know.
Maybe a talent.
Yeah.
Or a dual class. I could see vampire being like dual class.
Yeah, interesting.
Like pirate.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Lots of previews still coming thick and fast as we record this as well. Cool.
Real quick before moving on, I need to get this complaint in. Crown of Frozen Thoughts, ice equipment, headpiece, blocks 2, blade break. When this defends, freeze the attacking hero until the start of the next turn. Oh, hey, by the way, freeze the attacking hero. So this will freeze the owner of an ally if they're attacking with the ally and you block with this. However, this card is so incredibly narrow. I feel like they're moving ice into this sort of freeze mechanic space, but not giving them any good freezing Like, when I read this card, I was like, it's the same thing as that Encase, the same problem that Encase had back in the day in Icelander, where you read Encase and you're like, oh, this is so cool, I can freeze a hero. And you go read all the opposing heroes that you're going to face, and you're like, oh, this doesn't do anything. It does literally nothing against most of the heroes in the game. And that was Encase, which is something you could do on your turn before it gets to them. This one, they need to be attacking you, and then you freeze them, so they've already had a whole window to like activate a hero if they need to. And then if they're a hero like RKO, for example, Reviled KO, they just respond to this trigger and activate the hero anyway. So they took the already narrow Encase and it made it even narrow to the point where it's basically non-functional unless we see some heroes that really want to activate their turn after having already attacked. The Arachne agents come to mind, where you can go ahead and block this on an agent and they can't react on it.
It's pretty good against them.
Good against like Assassin, but
I think it is.
It's just I do feel like the new direction they're taking ice with this whole freezing thing, and the other channels are in line with this as well, do feel quite underwhelming, to say the least.
Yeah, I think this card's pretty reasonable, but we'll see. I can definitely see the complaints of its narrowness, but I do think the card is reasonably powerful. All right. No Commander Cookout this week. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, though, please do so. We'd love some more additional questions. Maybe it's about the set specifically, Compendium of Rathe. Maybe it's about Silver Age, for instance, or maybe it's about anything else. You can drop them in the YouTube comments below. Let us know it is a question for the Commander Cookout. You can drop them in Spotify comments as well. If you're an audio listener on Spotify, you can email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. You can give Pankaj your handwritten question with your name and question on it this weekend in London if you'll be there, or you can, if you're an Arsenal Pass patron, drop it into the patrons Discord. With that said, Pankaj, it's time to talk about Silver Age because there is so much to go through, and I guess what I want to start with is just your overall thoughts on Compendium of Rathe, and now that we've seen all the commons and rares, what it is bringing to this format. Let's all do this through the lens of the fact that Chain we know is benched this season, so we're not dealing with Chain, but we know there is already a bit of an established meta, so to speak. So what do you think of Compendium? What is it bringing with these commons and rares?
So I'll start by framing this with regards to the top dogs that I alluded to at the top of the pod, where because we had this little, half season of the sneak peek at Sage in the past few months, with the Battle Hardens, a lot of Battle Hardens being Sage, for example, we knew what the meta was going to be like entering Pen, and now we have seen the commons and rares, so does that actually shake up the established top dogs, which in my opinion are Oldhim and Briar, and I think most people would agree with that as well. You have the block 4 slop Oldhim, which is just fatiguing everyone, and then you have sort of super aggro Briar on the other side that is just chock full of 0-4-4s in a format where no one has 0-4-4 blocks except for the block 4 Oldhim. These two seem to be like the pillars of the format. I think there is also a little bit of like Enigma going around that I've been seeing as well. And of course, until now, there was Chain, except that he got benched. So as we look at this Pen stuff, like I said, I hope someone breaks his paradigm in London and comes up with something really new and fresh that people aren't expecting. But looking at the Pen spoilers, my initial take is that I'm not sure if there is enough power here to change the paradigm to overcome the Briar or the Oldhim. Except maybe, I'll throw this one, that maybe Fi, but we can get to that. What are your initial thoughts?
I think there's a lot of really creative stuff in here and a lot of like different potential archetypes, new avenues to explore. And I think that is what has given me a lot of excitement. Now, one thing I will caveat that with is that when this happens, generally, so I think this happened with Everfest, for instance. I think once you get through to it, you realize that a bulk of it is maybe not going to be up to scratch. But what I would say is with Compendium is that because it's really focused into trying to help deliver Sage as a format, I do think these cards, if I compare it to Everfest, for instance, I think on the whole, the quality of these commons and rares is a lot better than other expansion sets because they're more targeted to helping elevate the playability of these heroes in Silver Age. So I think that's really cool. I think there's a lot of width to what's happening with these cards as well. And with these just different ways that they're potentially upgrading heroes through the common and rare slot. There's some like effects that you've only ever seen at like a Majestic or Super level before that are being seen at a common and rare level, which I think is very cool, particularly from some of the power of the equipment, which we spoke about at length last week, for instance. So I think there's a lot to kind of dissect. I also think there's some real power just cards underneath it that are potential build arounds, which I think is what you need to develop a format like Silver Age. So yeah, I think what is going to be interesting is the current dynamic, but then also, is there enough within Compendium to break that? I think even if Compendium wasn't happening, so to speak, I think there would already be things that people would be exploring just when this gets to a higher level of competition that people would be already exploring, especially with Chain now hitting the bench. So I think when you couple those two things together, I think I've got a lot of excitement for what we might see this weekend. Do I still think we'll see a lot of Oldhim and Briar? Yeah, I think we probably will, but I think even in my brewing, I'm like, yeah, I know how. I think I have a really clear idea of how I would want to exploit Oldhim, for instance. I think Briar maybe less so. I think Briar's just a really powerful aggro deck, but I think there's probably some things that Briar also struggles with. Also, I think one of the beauties of this format, and I like about Sage, is that yes, you have the loadout for your extra slots for equipment or sideboard cards that you want, for instance. But you have to be very specific with those because you don't get a lot of slots, right? You effectively get 6 to 7 slots, so depending on your hero. So yeah,
I want to add on to your point about the commons and the rares being of most of them being at a little bit of a higher power level than what we normally see, and I think it's really cool. Actually, so many of these commons and rares have me really excited. Not just for Sage. I have thought about how to break some of these in Sage, but also for CC. Zooming out a little bit, we're sort of maybe talking Pen as a whole, but looking at some of these ninja cards, Become the Bottle, Become the Cup, for example, is just, it gets the juices flowing for brewing. The whole Warrior suite, the whole Unity suite, that's definitely more Sage specific, but I feel like that can give Warrior some real power in the format as well. The whole Teklo upgrades, the new bases, and then of course the protocols, and then the different mech cards as well for each of them. Like we have a wrench attack that's for Max. We have the boost with an Evo upgrade for Teklo. Like, to your point about this set sort of creating archetypes or enforcing certain archetypes, I definitely think they have succeeded on that front. So obviously too early to say, we haven't seen these cards actually being played, but it is giving me that vibe of we are seeing them either go a lot deeper into some of these established archetypes, like ninjas renaming their cards all over the place, Boost Teklo actually having cards to support it. But then there's also new full types of cards, and I want to shout out like the Ranger traps, which are not just defense reactions anymore, and they are these actions that have the trap keyword on them, which I think is just a fascinating new design space. I love the like risks they are taking to sort of elevate these heroes like Teklo, like the Riptides, where they clearly were missing something. Like they lacked the consistency, and they were just missing some of these cards that needed to do that weren't so narrow, and giving it to them. I think that's just it's really, really cool.
Yeah. What are some of the, I guess we're gonna go through the format a little bit, talk about some of the heroes, but what are some of the cards that have been standing out to you from what we've seen so far? I know you just spoke about some of the Carp and Spellbane Trap, for instance, was a card you were just referencing, or the traps, Ranger action traps. But is there anything that like power cards you think might be quite interesting that are really going to give upgrades to heroes, or could be potential build arounds for heroes?
I was looking at Become the Bottle. I was really Become the Bottle and Become the Cup to me feel like there could be something you could break with Zen and that. Then I was looking at the combo cards, because obviously Become the Bottle, Become the Cup kind of want you to work with combo, right? At least Become the Bottle does. Become the Cup is more about, I mean, you can like transcend off of the red Become the Cup, for example. You call it blue, which I think is pretty cool. I was wondering whether something could be broken there. There's a bunch of Draconic cards which seem to be pretty good with Phi. There's the cards that let you tutor out Phoenix Flames from your deck, which actually rewards you for having multiple Phoenix Flames in your deck, which means you can actually go into the cards that also leverage having more Phoenix Flames. So for example, Rise from the Ashes, which you play the card, and if you only have one Phoenix Flame in your graveyard, it typically feels really bad, because then you're giving up on your fire ability for the turn. But now Rise from the Ashes seems like it could be very real, because you actually might have multiple Phoenix Flames in the yard. And then you can also, if you say you see a Rise before you see one of your Phoenix Flame tutors, so you still only just have the one in the graveyard, you have cards like Fire that burns within, which lets you discard the Phoenix Flame. So you can still rise back a Phoenix Flame, discard it to fire and then buy it back later with Fi. So that's another thing that kind of caught my eye. So that's ninja stuff.
I think Fi looks really
the
good.
Teklo stuff,
honestly, I think Fi looks really good.
The Teklo stuff, I was wondering whether maybe there's like a boost Teklo thing in Sage, because sort of for the same reason that Dash was good in Blitz back in the day, is that when you can have these on-rate cards like 0 to 60 and throttles, which is like good numbers, but you can always give them go again because you're a mech and these things have boost. I was wondering whether there could be some angle there, but then I was like, I'm not sure why you would play Teklo in that case instead of just Dash IO
or Dash.
OG Dash.
Yeah.
So not so sure, but I mean there are some cool boost cards that you could perhaps leverage in mech in general, and then of course I mean Runeblade Fridge, and of course Runeblade's natural split damage seems really really strong. So those were sort of what caught my eye immediately. Did you have anything?
I had a few. Some of them you've kind of spoken about. I'm going to try and find some of these cards. Shimmering Mirage was one that kind of stood out to me, which if you haven't seen Shimmering Mirage, this is the Illusionist defense reaction that defends for 2. It costs 0, it's blue, and it has Mirage. So when it's defending a non-illusionist attack with 6 or more, then you destroy it. But it says, while this is defending, when this chain link resolves, banish this. You may play it this combat chain. I think, against 5, for instance, this is the kind of card you're looking for. So I think there's some power cards, but there's also some cards that are powerful in particular contexts of formats and what these decks want to do. So I think these cards are powerful, but not in the same way where Majestics have a lot of like raw, unfiltered power. I think these cards have a lot of tied to power, where they need to be in specific archetypes or played in specific ways or in specific matchups rather, to see the ceiling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Shimmering Mirage is basically quick dodge flexes, like on a card.
Yeah, on a stick.
Except, of course, it's combat chain reliant, whereas quick dodge flexes isn't. That is obviously a big knock against it. But yeah, against the Ninja, which is Illusionist's toughest matchup, you give them a card like this, and they can't really combo off on a chain anymore. Others just giving you free value. I think it's I think it's pretty cool. I
think Glyph Power Spell as well, which is wizard action, non-attack action, costs 2 and deals 4 damage to any target. If you control a card with sigil in the name, instead deals 6 arcane damage. And I know you've been outspoken on not enjoying some of these sigil cards. I think, maybe they're going to be a bit more powerful in Sage than in Classic Constructor, for instance. But I think, you don't have access to Burn Bears, you don't have access to Light Up the Leaves, for instance, but you do start with lower life totals, and 6 damage potential from a 2-cost spell is pretty significant.
And if you're the sort of wizard that's running Crucible, it's kind of easy for you to just make this 7. I think my problem with this card was, the moment I saw this card, I went to go search what all those sigils were, and was promptly disappointed because I was reminded that I had already done that when I was trying to break Glyph Overlay in like a non-Acilio wizard, and realized that there's just no playable sigil. And I think the same still holds true, because at least so far we haven't seen anything in Pen that gives you a sigil that's worth playing. Like there's this sigils of fate. You can make those tokens, but they're still not really cards I want to play. I really don't be like spending resources and my card economy on making sigils of fate to get like something like a Glyph Power Spell. So I'm still waiting on like a proper sigil. For now, this feels very much like aim counter-esque from like Dynasty, or like Guardian Shield Matters type stuff, where it's introducing, it's not really introducing an archetype. The archetype was introduced in Rosetta, so it's more of it's building upon it a little bit more, but I feel like it's missing a bunch of pieces.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, I think the card itself is powerful
for not Acilio.
Yeah.
Like maybe Acilio.
I think maybe there's just an Acilio deck in this format. Like there's 2 different Acilio decks in this Sage format potentially, which I'm interested to see. Yeah. You spoke about Fi. I think Inflame the Firebrand is very, very powerful. This is the 0-cost Draconic Ninja attack action. Attacks at red, attacks for 2, defense for 3. Since when this attacks, if you control 2 or more Draconic Chain Links, gets go again. 3 or more Draconic Chain Links. Your attacks are Draconic this combat. Sorry, all your attacks are Draconic this combat chain, and 4 or more this gets +2. I think that secondary, like your attacks are Draconic this turn, I think is actually very powerful. And obviously we know how powerful Brahma Cinderclaw is, for instance. I think this, and also being able to On big hands, one, this defense for 3. So on small hands, you can't just block with this for 3. But on bigger hands, this is a 0 for 4 with Go Again. And that is truly pretty impactful, I think.
Yeah, this would need to be your 4th Draconic attack. So that's not too difficult with fire. You have your Draconic Starter, Ember Blade, and Flame, and you're kind of already there. And you play this, although usually with that line, you're sort of left with 0 resources by the end of it, because you had to pay 1 for the Flame. So yeah, I could see it. I'm just curious about what the payoffs would be. So I think a big thing that like Brand was paying off in like Syndra, for example, is there's these cards that care about being Draconic, but there was also Dragon Scale or Flight Path, which you don't have. So you just have to lean further into, if this is Draconic, you get the additional effect. But the resource gets weird. Yeah, this is a card I'm definitely... Wait, is Brand with Cinderclaw even banned in Sage?
No, it's legal.
Right?
It's legal in Sage.
Okay.
So you get all the aspects, basically, of this, which is...
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So that makes this even better, because then you do get to put a certain density of Draconic Matters cards.
Yep, exactly. So you can do a little bit of creative things with this as well, which I think is quite cool.
Yeah.
Any other cards that were standing out to you that you wanted to speak about? I think those are most of the ones that were on my list.
Shapeless Form looked cool to me. Again, this was when I was in the little bit of a ninja tank. I did try and brew Zen for a little bit. Shapeless Form, which is a 0-cost Mystic Ninja action attack, comes in for 1, blocks for 2. It says whenever you play an attack action card with Ephemeral, choose a name, it gets the chosen name. Go again.
That's pretty cool.
So this is your attack. You can transcend off of it because it's blue. If you transcend off of it, you get a Tiger. That's an attack with Ephemeral. Get to choose a name. And then Zen lets you even tutor a card with combo. So it's very much like a build your own Katsu, kind of. Where the Tiger you play, you can name it whatever you want. You can name it like a Surging Strike. And then after you can find your Whelming Gustwave, for example, off of Zen. And then go ahead and play it. So that's kind of what got me into the whole, is there some sort of leaning further into combo stuff with Zen to sort of turn him into like, you sort of get advantage of like Katsu's combo lines, but on Zen. I don't know, maybe there's something there. This card clearly is signaling you to go in that direction.
Yep, I'd agree with that. Okay, I'll shout out one last one. I think Florian looks like he might be quite decent in this format, honestly. So I'm going to shout out Chorus of Rotwood. I think Florian's got a lot from Compendium of Rathe in particular, but this is the Earth Runeblade action at red, cost 1, defense 2, has Decompose, and then says create 3 Runechant tokens. So it's an enabler for your Decompose, and it also creates Runechant tokens, and it's also an Earth Runeblade action in and of itself. I think this kind of does everything you want it to do. So I'm interested by Florian, I would say, after seeing this card in particular.
He also has that 2-card 8 with I need to remember what the card is called. It's got his art. Runic Felling Song. Yeah, that's one. You can banish an aura from your yard. If you do deals 1 arcane, it's 3 for 7. 2-card 8. He also did get a 3-block aura in the form of Sigil of Sylphide, which we spoke about last week. So, yeah, I could see Florian potentially having some legs. I think my big question for these defensive style decks, something that I just keep coming back to, is how are you dealing with the barrage of 4-power attacks coming from the aggressive deck in the format, in the form of Briar. And I think the reason Oldhim is sort of allowed to play is because he does have the density of 4 blocks in his deck. And so when you tell me something like Florian, which wants to play a little bit more mid-rangey, my first question is how are you dealing with like all these 4 attack with on-hits, right? Like the snatches or the burn-up shocks that the Briar is sending at you. So that's sort of what's made me hesitant to look towards a more mid-rangey style.
They do have a fridge,
though, in this format for now.
They do have a fridge.
They do.
Which is important, I think. So I think they want to play kind of, I don't know if I guess it's kind of mid-rangey. They want to play a little bit trade early, and then they kind of just want to go for it, right? I think is what the deck looks like. So use your fridge early in conjunction with 2 blocks, fill the graveyard, and then aggressively decompose and into just value. I don't know. I agree. It's interesting. I think it's what was really cool about this format is the lack of Fate for Scenes and Sync Blows and Rip Out Carapace and things like that. So, yeah.
I'm going to need to see how that plays out a little bit. Like, I do agree that I think it is cool to like not have those cards, because I do think we'll sort of get a little bit too degenerate fatigue. At the same time, I do feel the reverse effect where now it feels like cards like Lightning Press are just that much stronger, because they go burn up shock, send an attack at you, and you just don't have any card that lets you play on Lightning Press profitably, especially if they are able to go wide. You have nothing you can do, and you're just going to eat the Lightning Press and the on hit, because you can't overblock on this and also overblock the next one, because you have nothing that combats them on that same, the reaction step, basically. So for me, the jury's still out on whether the basically no defense reactions piece lands in this format, but I do agree is probably a good place to start, because everyone just be adding all these 4 blocks into decks, and it'll be really annoying.
Yeah, and then they can potentially introduce one of them. You've got damage prevention, things like that, so I do think it's you've obviously also got some class specific stuff, which I like things being tied a bit more to class in this game, because it's a lot less of that in class constructed, right? So I think that's quite cool. Mm-hmm. I want to ask 2 last questions on Sage, which is, I think we should start with, what do you think is going to do well this weekend? And then maybe we'll go to some things that we're interested in, because they might not overlap, to be honest. So what do you think is going to do well this weekend for the calling? Obviously the world premiere is like the pre-con decks, but for the calling itself, what do you think is going to do well in the calling this weekend?
Unfortunately, it's just an easy answer, but I do think it's a correct one. I think it's going to be Briar. She also did get a new Nimblism, which we sort of didn't really talk about, but Sprout Strength is a card. 0 cost, I'll talk about the red one here. It does come in all 3 colors. Red one, 0 cost, Earth action, blocks for 2. It says your next attack this turn gets +1 3 times. So next attack this turn gets +1. Next attack this turn gets +1 3 times. Go again. It's basically a Nimblism in Briar. So she did sort of still get a card. I'm not sure if she's also playing some other stuff. And she was already
pair it with Flourish
very,
as well,
very
right?
strong.
You pair this with Flourish.
Yes, they do pair this with Flourish.
Yeah.
So she got upgrades too, and she was already sort of one of the top dogs. So to me, that seems like the obviously default easy save pick. She has the Runeblade stuff, right? The Runeblade Fridge, which she got upgrades from this set as well. She has the Lightning Press. She's on the favorable side of a lot of people lacking defense reactions. And of course, Briar is just, the hero strong.
Yep.
So that's my pick. What's yours?
Do you think Ultim's going to still continue to do well?
I think so. I think Oldhim is one of the few decks that can actually combat the Briar deck, right?
I don't know.
That's my understanding. Okay.
What other deck? So I think, I had on my list Ultim, Briar. I think Fire honestly looks pretty good. Whether people can find the right list in the right time. And I think Azalea in theory should have some game into Briar with disruptive on hits. Is it good enough? I don't know. But Azalea can dominate, go tall, potentially lock you out with a couple of good on hits. Sleep does pretty good against Briar, for instance.
I was thinking about that. What are the disruptive on hits? I can think of Sleep Dart. Hamstring Shot seems pretty
very good as well. Those are the 2 that came to mind for me.
Deck.
Yeah, those are the main 2 that came to mind for me. So I think Azalea might. Obviously you have the Lace Withs as well, just Lace's Blood Rock, just 0 for 5. You just here's my Sleep Dart, Lace With, Sleep Dart, dominate you.
It's your burn up shock.
Yeah,
basically.
Briar can't do
numbers.
Shit all about that, to be honest. So I think Azalea might. It just comes back to is it consistent enough? I don't know. The other thing that I do have I was thinking, I do think Briar is maybe the deck to beat this weekend. So I was like, what is good against Briar? And one that I was thinking on my drive home is Lexi potentially good?
I think that I was so prepared for you to say Icelander, because that's where my brain went when you tell me good against Briar. But yeah, Lexi I think could be as well. Are you thinking Ice Lexi then?
Yeah, I'm thinking Ice Lexi, yeah.
Or are you thinking Fuseless with Incarcerations? Okay.
No, I don't know, but I think Lexi has so many tools between the Ice and the Fuseless kind of stuff that probably there's something good there in Lexi. Is it good? Is it good enough to deal with then you also have to deal with Ultim and maybe Azalea, Fi, Marionette I think has been popular as well with people as well. So I'm is Lexi just too narrow an answer? I don't know, maybe. Is new maybe an answer potentially? These are all things I don't know, but I think what's exciting is there's so many things to explore. So yeah, I think it sounds like we both agree Briar, Ultim are going to do well this weekend, but maybe we also think Azalea might be good.
So my thing with the range is also firstly on Lexi deck building. Oh man, Lexi deck building has always been so fun.
Yeah.
Even when she's legal in 60. Just because Ice and Lightning are sort of disparate, but then you can find cool ways to put them together. I've just found Lexi out of Elemental Heroes extremely compelling to try and deck build for and try and find. And she definitely embodied like the different identities, it felt like, between like the ice side and the lightning side. Like when she first came out, there was the more ice side Lexi, and then there was also like lightning death dealer stuff, which was sort of seeing happening in Sage as well. And until ultimately she sort of just became fuseless and played Red Arctic Incarceration. That maybe was a little less exciting.
I agree.
But my problem with the ranges in Sage, the Lexi and Azalea, is like the Oldhim piece, right? Which is kind of why I'm still compelled, or I'm still investigating Icelander. You tell me Brian Oldhim are top dogs of the format.
Yeah.
It feels like Icelander can be built to beat both of them. I mean, she's naturally good into Briar because of the whole embodiments of Earth giving you priority windows, and of course she's being so redline. If you play an Arctic Incarceration in their turn, like a blue one, it feels like they sort of lose 2 cards from their hand because it's like 2 reds. She also, of course, has access to red Arctic Incarceration, and again, Briar's redline, they're not dealing with the Arcane properly. All your disruption is effectively taking full cards from them, so every Frostbite you make effectively blocks 4, is like sort of the idea, because you make them pitch like an extra card.
Yeah.
So I was looking at that, and after she does have this sort of combo game plan for Oldhim, which involves Eisenhower, Weather Vanes, Energy Potions, and Ice Eternals. Seems very tricky to pull off. I haven't done it yet myself. I've just heard about it. I don't know how much stock to put into how reliable that is. But I think if those can be solved, Icelander to me does seem like potentially a player.
Okay. I can buy that. And actually it's quite exciting, I would say. So it's something that was probably on my list of things to explore. Let's finish up with that. What are the things that you are wanting to explore? Sounds like Icelander's up there.
Definitely. I did also look at Nu, natural good into Guardian. I think my problem with Nu in this format is that she just doesn't have disruption.
Yeah, okay.
She had disruption when she was in CC. A lot of it was all off of Mask of Recurring Nightmares, right? Or of the Majestics like Bonds of Agony. In this format, it feels like I was looking for disruptive on-hits, and there just there aren't really any. She doesn't do any of the forking where they have to like try and figure out, are you going to pump it, are you going to mask them? She doesn't really have any of that. So also the ability is complete. Chi is useless in Nu. Chi is useless in Nu, except against Oldhim or like Guardian in particular.
Yeah, okay.
So it feels like you also want to have this whole
Can't do it all.
part. You have to have these matchup guides, these sideboard plans where you side out all your chi, and at that point, I'm sort of just like, I'm not sure if I'm even having fun playing the Mystic Hero if I'm not transcending.
Fair.
So.
I was interested in Nu, but maybe you're going to dampen my expectation or my excitement for that. I'm really excited. I'm excited about Rhino.
Or you could go crack it and then inspire me. I'd love that.
Maybe I'll have a look. I've been brewing some Rhino decks. I think in theory, the fact there's no defense reactions in this format, basically, there's block cards. But what's good against block cards? Intimidate. I actually think Rhinar is quite interesting. There's some really cool cards. There's obviously like some of the beat chest stuff. There's so many different directions I think you could take it. But there's also just some like really cool 2-cost cards that have been printed as well. So I think Rhinar is really interesting. You also have some disruption now in the form of
Strongest Survive.
Strongest Survive. That's the card.
You can play all the Strongest Survive.
Exactly. You could if you wanted to. And I mean, I'm always interested in Briar. Always been a big Briar fan. And I think Dromai is something I want to explore, but I haven't explored Dromai yet. But I think could be very cool, but also could just be terrible depending on how the format plays out.
On the Brute theme, I think Reviled KO
that makes sense actually.
Something to look at as well.
Yeah, KO might just be really good actually, honestly. Even just normal KO might be good. You might see a lot of play this weekend.
Yeah. Line Crossers is a pretty cool equipment piece. That's the one where if you have the same hero, if both of you are at the same life total, you're still considered to be higher than them. So you can start the game with your Mocking Blows online. So I think that's pretty cool. But again, I feel like, it's that same question of that Briar is sending 0-4s at you all game. How you keeping your life lead or even life parity without the ability to block these breakpoints and the split damage, right?
Yeah.
So that I think is a big question still yet to be answered. On the Runeblade theme, have you investigated Viscerai at all? Or is that something you're interested in?
I haven't. I'm always interested in Viscerai, but I think I'm more interested in some of the elemental or talented stuff, I think. So that's where my head's...
I started brewing some Viscerai.
Okay,
my main thing was that Nebula Blade is legal. And I think that's a very strong weapon.
It's a very good weapon.
So my build, the one I'm currently brewing, is basically the old the nostalgia. I'm sure a lot of this was just fueled by nostalgia, as I
Probably.
feel like a lot of my Sage stuff is. I mean, like Icelander, but I'm sort of like doing that. Remember Rainbow Morven Skies?
Mhm.
But instead of 2 costs, where it used to be, you go Shrill of Skullform
you
or
got
whatever, Swallow Assault into
The
Thorn.
new 1 cost.
You go for the 1 cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you have the Shrill of Skullform equivalent, right? With Hit the High
Mhm.
Notes. It's a 1 for 6 instead of 2
Yep.
for 7. And you end with Nebula Blade, which Nebula Blade feels like a very strong weapon in a format where the 4 blocks are very limited.
Okay.
So that's sort of something else I'm musing about, but we'll see.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for our first look at Silver Age. A lot of cool cards in the set. A lot of interest from our side in terms of potential decks. We have a bit of a view of what we think will do well this weekend. We will soon find out. Is someone coming to the table with something crazy that we don't expect? That isn't the Guardians, the Brutes, the Rune Blades. Is someone going to bust out something? Is there a Warrior randomly that might be very good? Attack reactions are probably pretty good in this format, right? So we'll find out more. It hasn't really played out in practice so far, but we'll see. So make sure you're tuning in to the coverage for Calling London and World Premiere Compendium in London this coming weekend. You'll see this gentleman right here on your screens, and you'll hear his buttery, silky smooth voice call all those games over the week. Well, not all the games, a lot of the games over the weekend, of course. And we'll have a lot to talk about next week, as then we head into ProQuest season in just a couple of weeks' time, starting with Sage, which I'm super excited about, before we switch to Classic Constructed.
I'm super excited as well. And also, I think this weekend will obviously set the stage for the smear campaigns that are going to come out, and for the heroes that people will be yelling in the streets to get banned. And I'm just so looking forward to that whole
I
entire
love it.
aspect of Sage.
100%. Cool. Well, that has been episode 251 of Arsenal Pass. Thanks to all our Arsenal Pass patrons. And until next week, post the world premiere for Compendium of Rathe, we will see you in the next episode.